Good afternoon, everyone. Can I get an emoji react just to see how everyone's doing? We're in day 3 of the PGFIS 2021, and welcome to the Research Analyst Career Track. So this is the 3rd day of the PGFIS 2021. The future starts now, and it's also the last session for the Research Analyst Career Track. So day 1, you heard from practitioners on what you need to know, and I guess a nitty-gritty about being an analyst, and then top-down analysis. Then in day 2, you learned about modeling and the basics of research report writing. And what better way to wrap it up, I guess, with an actual what a day of a research analyst looks like. So to culminate this journey on the research analyst career track, this last breakout session aims to provide a peek into the workday of a research analyst. So we have with us today Mr. Charles William Ang, CFA, who will share how he performs his responsibilities as a research analyst. So Charles is currently the head of research at Call Financial, a position that he has earned through more than a decade of analyzing companies. Since joining Call in 2010, he also serves as director of curriculum development and senior faculty instructor at Calum Trading Institute, a premier educational facility in the Philippines that aims to develop successful traders of global markets. As an advocate of financial literacy, he regularly conducts stock market and financial analysis seminars for Call, Calum, and CFA Society Philippines. He graduated cum laude from the Ateneo de Manila with a Bachelor of Science in Management Engineering in 2009, and he became a CFA charter holder in 2013. So let's all give a virtual round of applause for Mr. Charles William Ang, CFA. Allow me now to pass the virtual floor to you, Charles.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'd like to welcome everyone again to this breakout session. So I hope you guys are learning a lot so far. Okay, so on my end, I was asked to share what a typical day of an analyst looks like. And so with that, I prepared a short presentation for you guys with the hopes of having enough time later on to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so allow me to share my slide. Okay, so can you guys see my slides? I'm not sure. All right, okay, sige. All right, so let's start. Okay, so the first thing that we do as analysts, okay, when we arrive at the office or now we're working from home, so when we wake up basically, is that we catch up with the news. Okay, so as you guys are probably aware, like for example, events in the US market, for example, sometimes can affect the listed companies here in the Philippines also. So usually that's the first thing that we check when we wake up or when we arrive at the office. So we look at the most important events that happened overnight. Is there something that could potentially affect the Philippine market? We also try to read up on those things. And also not only about the US market, but also important disclosures of the local companies. Okay, because they sometimes disclose important information in the morning. So it's important for us to be on top of all these news. Okay. And basically anything that has happened the last 24 hours, we try to catch up with all of these events. Okay. Now, what's the point of this? Of course, a part of it is for the analysts to always be aware, but at the same time, okay, every day we write a report for our clients. Okay, it's called at least on our end for COL Financial, it's called our daily notes. So we write a report. We publish this before the market opens at 9:30, right? And so as you probably notice, we're starting a bit early. Okay, 7:30, with the hopes that clients or readers would have enough time to read and to digest whatever it is that we're writing about. Okay, so in this report, in this morning notes, you can say, we try to summarize the most important news for the day and to give our quick thoughts Okay, is this good for the company, bad for the company? What do we expect? What might happen to the share price today, right? So we share all of these things in our morning reports, okay? And on top of this written report, okay, we also, during this time, maybe around 8:30, we also present some of these news to our sales team, okay? Before the pandemic, we usually do this physically. So we visit their office, it's just beside our office, right? So we visit them, we share the most important news, right? But obviously, because of the pandemic, now it's a bit different. We just do everything virtually. So for this one, we just do it through a Viber group. So we just share the most important news, right? And so that they're on top of things. Okay, we won't be surprised when the market's open and let's say there's a major market mover. We're already aware. Okay, so next, so let's say we're done with that. You'll probably notice that for the rest of the most of the responsibilities, there's no fixed time. Okay, so this is just like an illustration or an example, right? But there's really no fixed time outside of the first responsibility, which is our morning notes. Okay, so let's say we're done with the morning notes. We're free to take a deeper dive on our coverage list, right? So what do we mean by this? Because the bulk of the responsibility of an analyst, diba? Kaya nga analyst yung tawag, is to analyze companies, right? And we don't just do that very, very quickly. So we really need to spend time and effort to analyze a company. So what does it take, right? So okay, so the way I explain it is that models, okay, models serve as the lifeblood of an analyst, right? So for example, in building a model, this is where you incorporate everything that you've learned about the company, right? So for example, let's say the previous day, let's say you met with the company and for whatever reason, let's say you became more optimistic about the prospects of the company going forward, right? So what you can do or what you must do as an analyst is that you go through your models and adjust your models accordingly, right? So you might want to, maybe you want to increase your sales forecast or your margins, right? And this is how an analyst could quantify, okay, could quantify the other qualitative things that he got about the company. Okay, so of course, doing the models is very time consuming, and it requires a lot of reading, a lot of updating, right? So we also read the financial statements of the company and any disclosures that the company make, right? Everything would serve as inputs to the models. Okay. Okay. So this one is usually the one that would say that would take the most time of an analyst, right? It's really regularly updating your models and making sure that everything's updated and everything's in line with what you currently expect of the company. Okay. And then, okay, so that's for the models. And then let's say we also do regular meetings with the companies that we cover, right? So here, as an example, we have let's say a one-on-one meeting with the company, right? At 11 o'clock, right? So we meet with them. We usually ask, let's say, clarifications of their recent performance. For example, if we notice, let's say, margins going down, we're going to ask them to explain why did it happen, do you expect it to happen again in the future, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then also during these one-on-one meetings, we also ask about the company's outlook going forward, right, and the strategies of the company. Right, so for example, let's say it's launching a new product, or let's say it acquired a new company, right? So we ask about these things, right? How it would impact the earnings of the company going forward, right? So for us as analysts, we typically try to meet with the company at least once a quarter, at least for the companies that we cover. Okay, so we try to meet them at least once a quarter, right? And this is on top of the analyst briefing, because analyst briefing, companies also do that regularly. So for most of the companies, they do that every quarter. This is where they announce, let's say, their earnings or any significant corporate events. So they announce that. So they do a briefing. Now with the pandemic, everything is virtual, so it's less time consuming. You don't have to go to their place or to their office anymore. You just attend a webinar, right? And yeah, so that's also, this one is an important source of information for the analysts. Okay, and this is also where you might imagine part of the edge, okay, of being an analyst versus a retail investor, right? The edge of an analyst that the analyst would have, right? Because simply said, we have better access to the company, right, compared to regular retail investors. Okay, so we try to maximize this advantage. Okay, and then let's say you're done with the meeting, so lunch break muna, and then let's say at 2 p.m. So in COL, for example, we have a weekly meeting with our sales team. We do that every Monday 2 p.m. right? Wherein we share the most important news for the last week, right? And yeah, to basically answer any questions that they might have regarding any companies, right? For example, let's say a company dropped by, let's say, 5-10% because of a certain reason, then they could ask us what's causing that move, and so on and so forth. Okay, and of course, the hope is that our sales team would be the one to relay those information or those answers to their clients. Okay, sometimes, okay, we also have scheduled meetings with our institutional clients, right? And wherein, again, the same thing, we share our views on the stock market, on the issues that we cover, on the issues that the clients might like or might be interested in, right? And also, we also have regular meetings with our team, within our team, okay? So where we brainstorm ideas, we talk about the latest issues, and we basically try to come up with the best analysis that we can have, okay, with regards to those issues. Okay, and then, oops, I think I missed a slide. Okay, and then let's say after that meeting, then you have again free time before the end of the day. Of course, we can't forget about this part of the analyst job, is to write reports. No, I think this is, if you think about it, written reports is the main way or the primary way in which analysts, especially sell-side analysts, convey their analysis or their recommendation. Okay, so obviously we spend a lot of time working on our reports as well, right? So this is where how we communicate with bulk of our clients, because as you may know, for example, COL Financial, most of our clients are online retail investors. So it's difficult for us to really conduct, let's say, presentations or meetings with them because of the sheer number of clients that we have, right? So it primarily, written reports are very, very important for any analyst. Okay, and throughout the day, so that's just the bulk, the major responsibilities that an analyst might have. And throughout the day, while doing those major things, we also continuously do these things. So we monitor the markets, right? Make sure we stay on top of important news, because sometimes even during the day or within the day, sometimes there's going to be an important news that comes out which would cause the share price to move, and which would result in a lot of questions from our clients, right? So we try to stay on top of things and try to address these questions or these concerns as soon as we can, right? And of course, again, we try to answer every day. Almost every day we answer questions of clients that they might have. Yeah, and then of course, being an analyst, this is probably the biggest difference. Okay, for those of you guys who've had finance classes in school, maybe I would say the biggest difference between classroom finance and in the industry is that the data. Okay, data in our classrooms are most likely given to us. Right, everything is already there. Like for example, when you're having an exam, diba, lahat binibigay na ng professor, right? Everything is given, right? But in the real world, right? It's not the data that you have as an analyst might not be the same for the other analysts, right? So it would depend on your ability to gather quality data, right? So of course, as an analyst, maybe you might say that I'll just rely on the company data, what the company tells me. But for me, that's just like the baseline, right? As an analyst, you have to go over that, beyond that, and get your own data, diba? To basically validate, to add more details to what the company is giving you, right? So you have a better understanding of the company. So that's also a big part of the day of an analyst. We're just trying to look for data in any way that we can, right? Whether it's macro data or company-specific data, or even now, for example, with the pandemic, we have all the data with the COVID-19, right? Like the vaccination rate of different regions, or when can we reach the threshold, for example. So all of these things have an impact on the stock market. So it's an important part of the day as well. Okay. So that's basically it, right? If I were to like group the responsibilities of an analyst, you can think of it this way. So, right, it's either we're gathering data, gathering information, right? And then after that, the second step would be processing or analyzing those data, right? And then lastly, communicating our analysis, right? Whether through written reports or meetings or presentation. Okay, so that's basically where the analyst responsibilities revolve around. Okay, and at the end of the day, the goal is to help our clients make the best investment decision. Okay, so whatever we need to do to help them come up with the best decision, whether to hold, to buy, or to sell, for me, that's the responsibility of an analyst. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. I hope I was able to share some specific, I guess, how the day looks like. And yeah, if we have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Charles, for those insights. To moderate the question and answer portion of this session, will you please call on Ms. Shane Estrellanes, third-year Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship at De La Salle University, Dasmariñas. So thank you so much, Shane. I'll pass now the virtual floor to you.
Thank you, Sir Miguel. And also, thank you, Sir William Ang. So for you, audience, I hope that you are also curious and dying to know. Oh, so actually right now we have a question already. So let's try to see if that fits. As a research investment analyst, what do you usually do on weekends? Do you proceed with your day as if it is a business day, or do you take the time to do leisure? Also, what would be the best time for analysts such as you to wake up during business days?
Okay, let me answer the first question first. Okay, so on weekends, well, maybe you could say the good thing about being an analyst or being in the equity markets in general is that the markets are only open Mondays to Fridays, right? And on the other hand, though, one challenge you might say is that markets are global markets, at least if you view it from like a global perspective, right? Markets are open 24 hours a day, basically, right? Because in the morning, of course, you have the local market and Asian markets, right? But in the evening, you have your US markets and the European markets, right? It basically takes 20. You need to be like aware the whole day, right? And so usually during weekends, I really try to take a break. Okay, so I really try to take a break from the markets. Of course, there will be times wherein there's gonna be like a major development over the weekend that would cause me to think about its impact on the markets, right? When Monday comes, right? So, but outside of those, I would say those are rarer than those are rare instances, right? So outside of those instances, I try to relax, try to not think of the market. Of course, siguro, if I were to be honest, especially if you're starting, if you're starting as an analyst, use the weekends to learn about your craft more, right? I mean, to develop your skills as an analyst. How do you model? How do you write reports, right? Because yeah, it would help you over the long term, diba? Once you're already experienced, maybe you could take a bit of a break there over the weekends. Right? And the second part of the question has to do with the morning. Is it like morning ritual? Is it like that?
Yes, po. It was asking, what would usually be the best time to wake up during business days, po?
Best time to wake up. Well, for me, iba kasi ngayon with the pandemic because we don't have to commute. But at least for me, I try to wake up still siguro. Ako, baka, medyo 7 o'clock siguro would be a good time for me because my preparations I'm very quick in terms of my preparations, right? So, basta 7:30, I have to be ready na and I have to be reading the news. 7:30 would be the latest for me. And sometimes nga, sa totoo lang, if I were to be honest, sometimes even before we do anything else, right? So the moment we wake up, diba? I don't know, some of you might be, I don't know, checking your Facebook. I don't know kung anong ginagawa. But usually for analysts, right? At least for me, what I do is that I check the US market, check for news. I go on Twitter and check on. I don't follow, entertainment people. Okay, I follow stock market people, right? And the reason why I check Twitter is just because it's a convenient way for me to see the headlines for the day. Diba kung ano yung nangyari, diba? It keeps me updated. So the moment I wake up, I already go on Twitter. I already check the US market for news, and yeah, and that's before I have my breakfast. Prepare for the typical day. Yeah.
Oh, so yes, well, sir, I also totally agree that especially on the weekends, that we should also have a break because in my perspective for research analysts that there is a lot of information to take in. So there is a need to take a break from that. Even if it's something that you really like you like really learning a lot and many things, but still, we still have experience of burning out and we're also human. So we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
Just to add to that, quickly, because I always say markets are very dynamic. Meaning every day, almost every day, there's new information that you have to think about, that you have to process. So although it might not be physically tiring, I mean, you really have to be alert, like 24 hours a day for 5 days. So as much as you can, if you can rest, diba? You really have to rest well also.
Okay, so for the next question, po, sir, maybe we could connect it to the previous question regarding, waking up early, especially because right now we're in the pandemic. Their question is, can you give advice to all aspiring analysts considering we're still adapting to a new normal setup virtually?
Advice? In terms of what? Like, advice in terms of what? Like going into the industry?
I think, sir, in this perspective, what they probably mean is because there's a limitation to us as being in a virtual setup that we can't go to other places. So unlike we can have the most that we can do is excuse me is within the internet, and sometimes within the internet we are still limited to get enough information. Some are heavily secured, such as research reports that are needed to be paid before we can even get some information out of, or stuff like that, sir.
Yeah, I think it's double-edged. Kasi in our world today, especially after the pandemic, diba? Everything is already online, diba? And I think on the bright side, there's really a lot of information available to anybody, to whether you're an aspiring analyst or even just kahit na hindi analyst, like even if you just want to be part of the industry, you want to learn about the industry, right? There's a lot of resources, in my experience, available online, right? Maybe even as simple as, for example, setting aside regular 15 minutes a day, or 15 minutes a day is very easy, right? Set aside 15 minutes a day reading reports, for example, every single day, diba? At the end of 6 months, at the end of 1 year, I'm sure you'll be surprised with the information that you already absorbed at the end of the year, diba? So yeah, a lot of the information might be paid, right? But I think even for the free ones, I think you could get a lot already. So, and I think as a starting point, that's really more than enough, diba? And of course, if you can find industry practitioners that could serve as your mentor, that's definitely the most ideal, diba? Kung mayroon talaga kayong kakilala in the industry, diba? That's the best source, kasi you could ask him diba, real life questions, diba? So maybe if you have access, that's obviously the best.
Yes, po. Thank you, sir. So we have another question, and I also think it's also similar to also my question. They ask, how can a research analyst be competitive, especially in the Philippine financial industry? Also for me, po, sir, how can you add value to yourself as a research financial analyst?
A lot of people, they have that misconception that analysts need to be really smart, right? I mean, you have to be smarter than everybody else. But in my experience, of course, there's a certain baseline, diba? Pero I mean, what separates the best analyst from the let's say average analyst would really be how much effort you put into it, diba? So I talked a while ago about data gathering, diba? One of the key characteristics of a good analyst would be he or she needs to be very resourceful. Meaning, even if there's no actual data given to you by the company, for example, you're wondering about their let's say pricing strategy, diba? Maybe an average analyst would just ask the company about it, right? But a good analyst, for me, would do their own due diligence, diba? Parang maybe if you could visit the stores, check the prices by yourself, diba? Maybe interview some of their clients, right? So it's all about being resourceful, getting data that the other analysts might not have. Diba? So it's an effort game as well. Diba? Na parang, of course, even if you're smarter than me, but I have more data than you, I have a better data. Hindi lang naman, I'm not saying more is always better, diba? It depends on the quality of data as well. Diba? So, but yeah, it really takes a lot of effort in becoming a good analyst. You really have to put in the time, diba? To have that edge over the others.
Oh, yes, sir. So in a way, po, sir, it's kind of like diversification as well, po.
The diversification of knowledge, parang ganyan. What do you mean by that?
Like in a way, po, not exactly like knowledge that is too far apart from what you're specializing in, but something that's you could also learn some knowledge that might be indirectly related to the specialty that you're
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Kasi as an analyst, you have to be well-rounded. Kasi, markets are interconnected, di ba? Yeah. So you have to be well-rounded. Yeah. So reading really helps. If you read a lot, that would really help.
Okay, but thank you, sir, for that answer. Next question is, someone here asked about rates. They ask if you see rates as asset that we should underweight for the near medium term, especially with the rising vacancy rates in firms adjusting to a permanent work from home or online setup. So I think they mean here is, should we really consider rates? Because right now
Yeah.
we're in a virtual setting.
Okay, yeah. You're talking about the REITs, no? So real estate investment trust, no? So generally speaking, yes, you should consider, even if we're primarily work from home, because if you look at the data, even today, diba, the BPOs are doing extremely well compared to the other industries, diba? Of course, may mga natamaan pa rin kahit konti, but if you look at their vacancy rates, occupancy rates, they're still very, very healthy. Diba? So, does it mean they're risk-free? Of course not, but we're not saying that. But I think still, relative to your typical companies, they have the advantage of being safer. Diba? Safer. And yeah, so mas predictable ang dividends nila. So I don't think it's off the table. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there, we have another perspective from rates, especially since on our previous topics, we were also talking about that, but they were also saying that rates is a really good thing. So I think we should also consider the possible cons to the subject topics that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we should think about them.
Okay, so on the flip side, yeah, that's a very good follow-up question, no? So on the flip side naman, it's not all good, no? Kasi ganyan naman sa stock market, eh. If you think about it, if something is safe or safer, generally speaking, that investment asset would provide a lower yield. Diba? Kasi if it's the same yield, so for example, let's say two assets na lang, in general to, it could be REITs, it could be anything else. So if there's two companies or two assets, one is safer than the other, and let's say they both offer, sabihin na lang natin, for simplistic, let's say they both offer 10% return a year. Obviously, everybody would buy the safer one, right? If both of them are offering it at 10% a year. So obviously, markets are efficient in this way, meaning to say prices would adjust in such a way that the safer asset would now be priced higher, okay, lowering its yield. Diba? So parang ano siya? So parang the trade-off would be, yes, it's safer, but generally speaking, we're talking about lower expected return going forward. Diba? So yan ang flip side ng REITs. Diba? I've mentioned a while ago, they usually pay above average, hindi ko yata na-mention explicitly, but they usually pay above average dividends for the REITs, right? But in terms of capital appreciation, especially over the long term, meaning years, right? Generally, it's more limited. So yan lang, that's what you have to remember, diba? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. So another thing, sir, you were talking about data gathering. And of course, as a student, sometimes we also want to know anything specific, like what news outlets do you approach when you read your financial news online? Or if you have any other methods of gathering data, sir.
Okay, well, yeah, usually the way I answer that is data gathering, especially in this day and age, ano na siya eh, anything and everything, as long as it's reputable, of course, di ba? Kung hindi naman trustworthy yung source, then I don't wanna read it, right? But But anything talaga. So, but of course, nandyan pa rin yung mga usual outlets like let's say the business segment of Inquirer, let's say Star, Business World, ano ba yung those usual news outlets. We read those every day, and we all Bloomberg, right? But outside of those traditional sources, again, it could be anything. So for me personally, one of my favorites that maybe some analysts they don't use as much would be Twitter. Diba? Yung Twitter kasi for me is very powerful. You just have to know who to follow, diba? If you're following, diba, let's say artista, you get a different kind of content, or diba? But if you're following, let's say let's say stock market people, then for me it's very, very, very powerful. So ako 24/7 nakabukas lang yung Twitter ko sa computer ko and the phone, di ba? So I several times a day I scroll through it, di ba? Para I could stay on top of things. Diba? So anything talaga, anything that you can come across that's reputable, you can definitely use that.
Okay, so yan guys, narinig mo yan. Sometimes the data is just right in front of us, or yun yung nasa on the street side, person selling newspaper. And also, I think, sir, I agree with you, sir, when you talked about Twitter. And sometimes, even if it's only the notifications, that we become aware of a situation po.
Yeah. And once you become aware, so for example, let's say somebody tweeted about, let's say the US, raising rates, for example, like that, right? Of course, you won't get enough information on Twitter, right? So now you can just search in Google, diba, about those news, and then you get more data, diba? So, diba? Pero at least in the initial filter, diba? Parang ano yung pinag-uusapan ng market, the market participants, ano yung headlines, ano yung what's hot during the day, you could see it in Twitter.
Sir, so I have a question here, sir. One of our topics before was regarding ESG. May I ask, sir, how does ESG affect research reports po?
Okay, actually ESG it's relatively new. It's a relatively newer segment of the industry, right? So it stands for environmental, social, and governance, right? The right now, from what we're seeing, okay, is that it's now more important than ever that companies try to at least address ESG concerns. Why? How does it play a role? Okay, because you can think of it as one of the main goals of the financial markets of being listed, for example, in the PSE, is the availability of funding, to get funding. So, for example, let's say you need to raise capital, you want to issue new shares, and ideally, as a company, you want to issue shares at a higher price, para less dilution, more value for your existing shareholders. So, with having said that, what's happening now recently, over the last few years, is that more and more investors or fund managers, okay, especially global funds, okay, especially for global funds, they now give a bigger weight on ESG. So simply said, kung hindi ka medyo mababa ka in terms of their ESG score, they won't invest in you, even if you're making a lot of money. So indirectly, you won't be able to raise capital at an efficient manner, and this would, over the long term, hurt your ability to grow your business. So it has to do with the availability of funding. So for us as analysts, we have to be aware of which companies are high, or score well when it comes to ESG versus others who are average or below average.
Okay, sir. So thank you for that answer once again. Another one is, how do you prepare on your one-on-one meetings, sir?
Okay, so usually Okay, so usually you have to know a lot about the company first, di ba? Kasi what we don't want to happen is to ask, let's say, lazy questions, di ba? Let's say, if I just ask, okay, ano ba yung nangyari? But they disclosed it in their recent disclosure or in their financial statement, then it's just a waste of time, di ba? So the first thing that we do is we really try to update ourselves with the company. So we analyze the company, we read the latest disclosures again, see if we missed anything, diba? And then while we're going through those recent events, recent disclosures, I personally, we everybody naman in our team, we prepare questions, diba? Parang ito medyo I need more details in this development, so I'll write it down, diba? Yeah, so that's what we do. So you have to start analyzing the company even before you meet with them. So you're prepared to ask the better questions. Because if you don't prepare, usually the tendency is you're gonna be asking the simpler questions. Diba? Na parang waste of time lang, diba? Na parang something that you theoretically could have gotten yourself. Diba? So there. So you really have to preparation before meeting is, especially if you're new. Let's say you don't know a lot about the company, sometimes you need the whole day just to prepare. If you're not familiar with the company, of course, over time, let's say you're covering the company for years and years and years, because sometimes you already know, so you need to only prepare for 1 or 2 hours. You're okay. So it depends on your familiarity with the company.
Sir, oh, thank you. So, for the next question, I think these are for the really unfamiliar with the career prospects of research and analyst. Is there any certification exams or any like supplemental certificates to help our career as research investments?
The CFA, the CFA license, right? Yeah, so it's not really a requirement per se. I think maybe some companies might require some of the some of the brokers might require you having passed at least even the level 1 exam, right? For COL, we don't really require them, but if I see, for example, an analyst or a candidate applying that already passed or that's taking the level 1 exam, for me, that's a plus point, definitely, even if it's not required. Because of course, if you take the exam, you'll get a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, diba? But more than that, I think what it signals to your employers, prospective employers, is that you have that discipline to study on your own. Diba? I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the curriculum, diba? Pero yun nga, I think the consensus view is that it takes a lot of hours to prepare for the exam, diba? So whenever I see a fellow charter holder, diba, I know that diba, at some point in their life they put in a lot of hours studying finance, and it gives you a certain level of parang confidence, diba, in their not only in their knowledge but also their discipline. They have that discipline to put in the effort. Okay. So yeah, that's the benefit there.
So, ayun na, mga audience. You've heard that one of the certifications that you could possibly get is the CFA Charter Holders certificate. So with that, you could probably go to the CFA website to check on their program. And possibly the last question, sir, what is the biggest challenge that you always come across as a research analyst?
Siguro when I was younger, talaga parang okay. I guess the biggest challenge, and in my experience already in dealing with the newer analysts, usually the biggest challenge for the analyst is dealing with uncertainty, diba? Kasi in school, diba? In school, every question, almost all of the question, there's a correct answer. There's a correct way of doing it, and there's a correct answer. If you don't know the answer, you haven't looked hard enough. And if you look hard enough, you'll find the exact solution to the problem. And it's very specific. It's very, there's no ambiguity. Diba? But in reality, especially in the stock market, diba, I always say stock markets are always forward-looking. What do we mean? Diba? Everything that we basically try to think about would be things in the future. Diba? Ano mangyayari bukas? Would sales go up by 10% or 20%? Would margins go up or go down? Would this competitor do this or that? Diba? So you're always thinking about things in the future, and by definition, diba, nobody can say what would happen, at least with 100% certainty. Diba? Some would be more uncertain than others. But nevertheless, diba, when you're doing your forecasting, when you're doing your modeling, you have to be comfortable with uncertainty. Diba? Na parang, sige, let's say, diba, they announce that they're gonna, let's say, they announce a new product, diba? And you have to, in a way, try to value that business segment, diba? But of course, not all of the information that you need would be available to you. Diba? Most of them, you kind of sort of have to guess. Diba? So you have to be comfortable with that. Diba? Of course, hindi naman pwedeng dart lang na you guess anything that you want. Diba? It has to be educated, right? But still, you have to be comfortable with really uncertainty and not knowing whether you're right or wrong. Diba? Even if I spend days or weeks studying a company and I come up with a recommendation, I don't know if that's right or wrong. What I know is that I just did my best. I took every information available to me. I combined it to form my analysis. But whether or not markets would prove that I'm right or wrong, I wouldn't know until 6 months, 12 months from now. Diba? So you have to be okay with that. Diba? So that for me is maybe the biggest a challenge that some analysts might have, especially the newer ones.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we have to keep that mentality that there's really just some things that we can't really answer for sure. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, yes, sir. So like, unfortunately, we are lacking the time needed for any more questions. So I am giving this back to Sir Miguel. And thank you, sir. And thank you, Sir William Ang, for answering our questions.
Thank you also. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Charles and to Shane for a very fruitful discussion. A lot of insights on, I guess, what the kind of like debunking myths about the life of a research analyst. So we'd like now to take this opportunity to thank Charles and Shane on behalf of CFA Society Philippines. So let me just read out the certificate citation. So CFA Society Philippines presents the certificate of recognition to Mr. Charles William Ang, CFA, for his valuable contribution as speaker, and Ms. Shane Estrellanes for her valuable contribution as moderator for the session on the job, a research/investment analyst day at the Philippine Junior Finance and Investment Summit 2021. The future starts now. So thank you so much again. Let's just have as per tradition, a quick photo op. So I think Precious Array will count and then to give us the cue.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you also.
Thank you again, Charles and Shane. So we're almost done with day 3 of the PGFIS 2021. The future starts now. Let me just announce the winner of the trivia quiz. So we have Mr. Josh, Ron Vicente, and Mon Gabriel Agustan. So please message the PJFIS Facebook page to claim the call-funded certificate prize. So again, that's Josh, Ron Vicente, and Mon Gabriel Agustan. And of course, please don't forget to complete the evaluation form today. You need to complete the evaluation form to get your certificate. And before we wrap up, let me just take this opportunity on behalf of CFA Society Philippines to thank our sponsors and partners, our platinum sponsors, MSCI Philippines, our gold sponsors are AP Securities and Call Financial Group, our silver sponsors are Atram, DBP Daiwa and Papa Securities, our media partners are Business World and Business Mirror, and our event partners are the Bureau of the Treasury, the Philippine Stock Exchange, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. So that wraps up day 3 of the Philippine Junior Finance and Investment Summit 2021. The future starts now. So tomorrow is the last day of the summit, and we'll see you all again tomorrow for day 4, the last day. So thanks everyone, and stay safe, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.